Right. Hey guys. Welcome back to another episode of Language Diary. And I realize it's been like a really long time between the last and this episode, but I had a good reason. I moved countries. But anyway, that's probably not why you're here today. You probably want to hear about this topic. And what I would like to share with you guys will be some thoughts on the role teachers have to play in the language learning journey. So I've been on both sides of the equation. I've taught languages before, and I've been a student of languages in various capacities. So, excuse me, I would like to, I guess, explore and share a couple of my experiences being both a teacher and a student. Let's start with me being a teacher. So, for me, I guess I want to talk a little bit about the students that I worked well with, or I felt like got something useful out of our lessons, and the students that I didn't work as well with, or they didn't seem to get a lot of value out of our sessions. The main, I guess, distinction between the two groups of students was that the group of students who got a lot out of the lesson, or who were satisfied, right, with what we've learned in class. And this is irrespective of level. This is not to do with whether you're a beginner. It's like if you're more advanced, you'll get more. It's not like that, right? I've worked with students across the entire spectrum of abilities, of ability. But the important thing was that the category of students that was satisfied, they usually had a very clear idea in terms of what they wanted to achieve in the session. So for example, I remember I had a student who was learning Cantonese, right? And I think he was American. Actually, I can't tell. And he was going to come, I think, to Hong Kong for a period of time because apparently I think his wife was from Hong Kong, right? And so they were visiting, and so he wanted to do a bit of preparation. And so he focused specifically, he said, I want to focus specifically on food, like how to order food, various scenarios that, I might get into, in a restaurant and all that. And so we did a couple of sessions, and after that, he didn't continue, but that was fine, because I knew his objective right from the very start, and we accomplished that, throughout the course of I think it was like 6 sessions or something like that. And another example was with a higher level student. This particular student is a mother. She is half Canadian, half Cantonese, I guess, half Chinese. And so she is already kind of like fairly native in Cantonese, but she lacked the vocabulary, more specific vocabulary, because she liked to pass it down to her children. And so, every lesson she'd come to me and we would discuss various topics. It could be, we talked, I think, about gardening terms in Cantonese, about like fairy tale terms in Cantonese, and which was quite tough. There are certain things that were fairly difficult to translate. So again, we didn't have a huge number of stuff. I think we together did maybe 8-10 sessions or something like that, spread out over the course of a period of time, but she accomplished her objective, right? So the clearer you are about what you want to learn and accomplish during your sessions with your teacher, the better and the more, I think, fulfilled you'll be. And so that would be, I guess, a share, I think, from some of my sessions with some of my previous students. And I guess I might just share one more story. I was very satisfied, I think, with one student in particular as well. This student wasn't learning Cantonese per se, but he was learning Mandarin. Now, we didn't have that many sessions either, right? And what he really wanted to do was just to have like a refresher. He wanted to keep his Mandarin alive, pretty much. And, we got got to talking, and it was fairly fluid. So, in other words, I didn't actually help that much per se because he was already fairly fluent in it. But once again, he had an objective, right? He wanted to maybe meet different people in Mandarin and talk to them in Mandarin, and he wanted to keep it alive. And we were able to have a conversation in Mandarin, and again, he accomplished this objective. So once again, it's not even about how much sometimes you learn, right? If your objective could be something entirely different, but it has to be clear, and it has to be something that you really want. And so that would be another story I think I'd pile on, right? So let's go to the other side of the equation and to when I was a student, right? So at which point in my language learning did I feel the need to have a teacher? Well, I think that if you've read any of the stuff I've written before, you'll know that I'm not generally I'm not a huge advocate of getting a teacher right from the very start. I don't think it's very effective because getting a teacher right from the very start, your teacher's going to be going through the real basics with you, right? And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. You could easily learn those basics yourself, and you can do that a lot more effectively. All you need is to find a really good resource to help you go through these basics. Maybe through a dialogue course, or maybe like a good basic grammar text, right? You don't need extensive grammar, but you do need some like the basics, especially for like a grammar heavy language. You know, if you've got like conjugations and you've got declinations, and it's a fairly, you know, there are things like that, right? Or you've got honorific language, you know, then you do need to have like an idea, right? But if you have good materials in front of you that you could use that in place of having a teacher. Because think about it, isn't it a waste of lesson time to have someone teach you something that you can do yourself? And you can probably do so a lot faster, right? Just go through a nice guidebook, you know, with exercises, and you're good, you're golden. The only exception to that rule, I think, in the beginning, for me, would be pronunciation, because there's no feedback, right? A book can't teach you pronunciation. You can't hear, you know, how you pronounce certain words. So that's when you probably need a teacher. So for me, I usually, for the most part, I got a teacher when I had all of these fundamentals down. So when I'm at around like a B1-ish level, so I'm fairly comfortable constructing sentences, I can understand what the teacher is saying, and I wanted to really start doing conversation. I wanted to talk in the language, right? And that's usually not like my priority, because I don't really get the opportunity to talk a lot. For me, you know, my objective is more in terms of understanding, reading, and to a certain extent writing. Speaking is, for me, not as important as these areas, which might be different than other people. But for me, I get a teacher when I feel I need to have a conversation. You know, I wanted to get a little bit of that in and see how well my personal kind of training or learnings have paid off. They are, you know, what I've learned as effective as I previously thought? Maybe not. Or maybe it was even better. That usually doesn't happen, but I can get like a real sense in terms of my level, right? So I guess to kind of summarize, you should get a teacher, and I've written a couple of examples here, is when you need someone to guide you through conversation, right? Because that's something that you can't do with a book, you know, and I don't recommend doing friends, I don't recommend doing language partners. Neither is a very good solution to having a conversation. When you need pronunciation practice, again, feedback. You can't do that with a book or resource. You need someone to maybe check over stuff you've written, or maybe through like something you want to present. Then you need someone to give you feedback, a native speaker and someone who's hopefully trained or at least patient enough to hear you out and give you feedback on it. When you might not understand a very specific grammar point and you need practice, like understanding first and then drilling it afterwards. Or maybe at a higher level, you need a teacher to be a little bit stricter with your use of words, or maybe your grammar is a little bit flaky. Then that's when you'll need someone to impose those standards on you, because it's hard to do it on your own, right? And old habits die hard after you've done it for a while. Another example I might share is I once worked with a Cantonese student, and who was fantastic. I mean, he is possibly the best student I've ever worked with in terms of proficiency. Like, he was watching films and using vocabulary that was like at a native level, but his pronunciation was really off. So he might in the future decide to improve that, because it's such a shame, right? He could speak so fluently, and he had such a large vocabulary that probably matched that of a native speaker. But his pronunciation didn't reflect that, right? So that's something he might want to consider doing. So on the other side of the equation, what the times when you should not get a teacher, right? Again, a couple of examples I wrote down. You want to go through like a curriculum, a textbook or something, which you can do by yourself, something that is replaceable. You should not get a teacher. You want to go through phrases or vocabulary topic by topic and need someone to introduce you to it. Again, you can read a phrase book by yourself, and you can construct phrases by yourself, even if they're not particularly native, if you can make yourself understood. To me, in my books, that's good enough. Again, not necessary to get a teacher to do that, right? If you want to learn like the basics, like grammar or alphabet stuff, you can go through very, very easily on your own, and in a fairly short period of time. Do not need a teacher, okay? Let's see. If you're doing conversation practice and you find yourself kind of like going into the same topics over and over again, you're really not making progress, maybe that's when you might consider dropping, conversation sessions with a teacher for a while and working a little bit more in terms of your input and output. So that's all for today in terms of content. And the action item for today would be split into two categories. First of all is if you already have a teacher, ask yourself just two questions. First of all, I'd like perhaps we'll get to share this and ask, do you really need a teacher, right? Are you making progress with your teacher? And if you feel that you do, are you maximizing the effectiveness of your lesson? In other words, are you doing things during the lesson that you can't do on your own, right? I think that's something that's really important. And second of all, if you don't have a teacher, should you get one? Do you think it's time to introduce having someone else to kind of watch over you, or to be your conversational sparring partner, right? And if so, if you think that it's right, what do you want to do in the lesson? How do you want to format it? Do you want to do like loose conversation, structured conversation, based on maybe an article you've read or something you've heard? You want to do like listening practice? You want to do a little bit of writing practice and like feedback? What do you want to do, right? And then you want to have the teacher correct you along the way. It's something that's very important. Okay, so that's about it for today's episode. And two more things to announce. Next time we're going to be doing something a little bit different, but very exciting. We're going to be talking about, we're going to be doing a comparison from a perspective that no one else, I believe, has done before, between the 4 Asian languages I'm familiar with: Cantonese, Mandarin, Korean, and Japanese. So that's something I hope that you guys can look forward to. And second of all, I've been getting requests from some people to actually do this series in Cantonese, I guess, since this is kind of like a Cantonese devoted channel. So if I get enough requests, or if I get enough like emails and interest from readers saying that you should try doing this, and I might consider doing that seriously. Currently there is some interest, but I would like to see more interest. And you can, of course, show your interest and, by extension, support for this channel by giving this video a good old thumbs up, and of course subscribing to the channel if you haven't already done so by clicking that red button somewhere below here, I hope, and the bell button afterwards, to stay up to date with the latest videos and announcements. Alright, excuse me for ranting on, and that's all from me for today, and hopefully I'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much for tuning in, and yeah, cheers.